What's going on, guys? We are back with episode 5 of the 0 to 3K series, where I will be trying to pug completely solo on a brand new class and spec as a healer that I've never played before. To check out any episodes that you guys may have missed from this series, there is a playlist that you can click in the top right hand corner of your screen. If you guys haven't already, then be sure to subscribe and ring the bell. If you want to see some more of my content, then be sure to check out my Twitch at twitch.tv/Newmen_TV, or click the link in the description for WoW live streams of keys and mythic rating. Alright, let's see what's in our vault. So we did get really lucky last time with a tier helm piece. So basically any tier piece but that would be pretty good. Or basically anything on the hero track that I can catalyze. And would you look at that? We got gloves that we can catalyze or a offhand. Since I did buy the evoker staff and we did take sockets last time, I believe, if I remember correctly, I think that means that the gloves are a pretty easy choice to get our two-piece. Since at this point in the season, we basically have more catalyst charges than we could even use. And I just checked, once we actually catalyze these gloves, we'll actually have our best stats on any tier piece. So that is really lucky. I'm very, very happy with that. And our key is a +7 Uldaman. So let's get into it. After picking these gloves from my vault, I went to catalyze them. As for my bullion, I thought about it and I decided to go with the Airnog ring because it will be replacing a ring from last season. The other reason is that we already have a Broodkeeper's Promise from LFR, and I have other pieces of gear like my weapon that I would rather spend my crests on for now. So I only have to wait until next week to actually get another purchase, and by then I should be closer to having enough crests to actually spend on the trinket that I'm gonna buy. Since this ring will be a permanent item, I threw a crit enchant on it. Last but not least, I want to spend the crest from last episode to upgrade my weapon and ominous chromatic essence a few times. So our first key was a +8 Nokhud. This key was basically a warm-up key since, spoiler alert, we didn't actually complete it. Since we won't be doing LFR this week, because I would rather just wait until next week when we can get both of our bullions from one run. I want to try to do 8 keys this week. I wanted to do mainly 8s or 9s if possible, since there won't be the hardest affix, which this week was bolstering, but it does mean that we can still get myth track gear from our vault. These will be massive upgrades, so I'm really trying my best to get as many as possible. The affix that we will have to deal with this week though is Afflicted. As far as I know, Evoker is the only healer that can handle when 2 of the ghosts spawn, other than maybe Mass Dispel from Priest. It isn't always the right choice to do this though, since your dot dispel can be really crucial for some fights, like the third boss in Uldaman with the dot, or even the start of Nokhud with the mobs that charge at you and leave a big dot. This key was actually going pretty well until we got to the second boss, where our warlock was way too far out of my range. This has kind of been a constant feeling this week, where casters are spread out on a boss fight, and it causes me to be unable to reach them, or even put my own life at risk to try to save them. I understand you have to spread around this boss to try to collect as many orbs as possible, but it definitely would help if the warlock would have been a lot closer to the boss, while still being spread out around the boss. Even before this death, our warlock's damage was a bit low, and this boss really requires that damage be good enough, since eventually you will kind of run out of CDs to live the storm intermission. After a few wipes, I joined a +8 Uldaman. Luckily, before this key even started, our tank made everyone aware that my range is limited, so this key was actually really fun to play since I can cleave heal so much more when the group is close together. Few deaths on Bromac and the Lost Dwarves, but overall nothing too bad. Even the third boss went well enough, but then our tank randomly falls over, doing a big trash pull in about a second, and we ended up wiping.
Kick.
Something that I learned on
Kick.
Emberon was the importance of staying very close to your party when the intermission starts. In most of my keys on my main as a mage, which has tons of survivability, I can easily be separated by the lines from my healer, and I'll usually be fine. I got split up from our demon hunter who got hit by a beam, and then later on my boomkin. Last but not least, we would have timed this key, but we wiped
Frontal.
to Chrono Lord Deos. Our tank had meta available,
Defensive.
but didn't use it for the frontal, and basically went from mostly full health to dying in a few seconds, and we ended up wiping at 30%. Even though we didn't time the key, we still got a dungeon for our vault and 210 score, which is a lot because I'm pretty sure this is our first Uldaman of the series. A little trick that I like to use this season is with the new dungeon filter. So as the week goes on, I will slowly start to skew my search for only the dungeons that will give me the most amount of score possible. I usually go with the lowest 4 at a time and slowly make it less and less. This allows me to search for groups that will progress my score as fast as possible and allow me to filter by the leader's score, which can hopefully lead to finding better groups. Next, I decided to go back to Nokhud, and we went with Lust on first pull this time, which I actually prefer on Tyrannical looking back, since it means that we'll have it up for the second boss, who gave me trouble last time. So after killing the second boss, we dealt with the Ancestral Trash Packs. This time we actually had a patrol that came and put a little bit too much pressure on our tank, even when I used time dilation on them, which spreads out 50% of the damage they take over 8 seconds. This is one problem that I've noticed with Preservation Evoker, is that you have pretty great healing, but in terms of preventing one-shots, you seem to lack big cooldowns like Iron Bark or Pain Suppression, but I do admit Zephyr can help out with this a
Collect
little bit.
soul.
Last boss wasn't the cleanest kill, but we did still get the 2 chests and a pair of Hero Track bracers. I'm actually going to be using these for a while since they are an upgrade, but if this series goes on long enough and I have enough excess aspect crests, I will likely craft an embellishment in this slot. Next up was a +9 Brackenhide Hollow. This key was really fun since there wasn't a ton to
Kick.
heal, which showed by the end with us only having 1 death the whole run, and it was from a misplaced tank frontal on Treemouth. We had a very overqualified fire mage who was blasting the whole key, and we are still at a key level that if everybody switches to the totem on the last boss on Tyrannical, we aren't really running into too many problems with it wiping us. But I think having an
Frontal.
augmentation of ogre can make this a bit harder since you won't have that third DPS that can burst down the totem. But we did get 94 score, meaning that we're already at 1,883. So we're actually getting really close to Keystone Master, and this is about the same pace for our last 2 series, so really happy with how it's going. Next was a +8 Ruby life pools. I believe this group might have been carrying the Frost Mage here since his gear was quite a bit lower, and to be completely honest, he rarely pressed any defensives, so possibly a newer player. We had a few deaths early in the dungeon to being greedy with swirlies, and then the mini boss hitting really hard, and eventually we had a near full wipe after the other mini boss got aggroed, and only
Frontal.
our tank managed to survive, but this actually saved the pull, so that was pretty lucky. Surprisingly, Blaze Hoof went well, and we actually had most of our troubles with the
Kick.
last boss. I seemed to get targeted with Inferno Core a lot, and after using my defensives on the first few, I ran out and wasn't able to survive. Looking back, I definitely should have used my Zephyr and time dilation a lot better, but we did
Frontal.
wipe, I believe, once, and on the second pull, most of us died again, but somehow with just me and the paladin left, we managed to live for about 15 to 20 seconds before our paladin rezzed the tank and we barely killed it. I won't lie, this was a pretty stressful and honestly frustrating key, since players' ability to use defensives and be aware of incoming damage can have such a massive impact on your healer's experience. Regardless, we got 25 score, and we are actually halfway done with our vault for the week. As a reward, I got Hero Track gloves, which sucks pretty bad since we took a pair from our vault, and the DK traded me a Ruby Whelp Shell that can help me upgrade my trinkets a bit for free. I upgraded my trinkets, then joined a +9 academy. Something I learned from doing keys is that before it starts, you can cast Tip the Scales and the buff will carry over while resetting the cooldown so that you can technically start a dungeon with 2 instant cast empowered abilities, and you can also set up your stasis, but this does only have 30 seconds to be used when the key starts. I'm not sure if there's any other abilities I could be preparing, so let me know down in the comments. Anyways, back to the key at hand. We lusted the first big tree boss pull, and I'm not too sure what caused the death here. I think the paladin got aggro and the warlock stood in a swirly. After this, I accidentally verdant embraced into a tornado. We made our way to the bird boss, which is pretty fun to play as a healer, because you can try to see how many stacks your group can have while you try your best to live. We had a ninja pull that was pretty unnecessary if we just took our time, which got me killed as we headed to the final boss, where we defeated her to get 104 score, which means that we are now at 2012 score, and as a first time healer, I have reached Keystone Master. This is our first big achievement in the series. Feels really good to accomplish. It also means that we get our third piece of tier via the Omni token. I went with chess piece since it is a pretty popular tier piece, and chess piece is one of the highest value items that you can have at a high item level since it just gives you so many stats. I put a waking stats enchant on it, and we are now ready for our next key.
Defensive.
We joined a +9 Neltharus that didn't go well at all. I'm gonna keep it really short and
Charge.
simple. I lusted first pull since I really want it up for Kargath, because in my opinion Magma Tusk should be significantly easier. We wiped to him 3 times and had plenty of deaths, some of my own, to lava waves, being too spread out, and some early deaths that just made the boss take way too. By the end, our paladin's damage was below the tank, and after that, our
Defensive.
tank kept the boss in the lava during our last pull, where the AoE went off and the shaman asked what is going on with heals, before the paladin calls me bad and I get kicked. I realized that the shaman and paladin were in a guild together, and the paladin was only 500 score, so I think he was covering
Defensive.
for him a bit. Overall, not too bothered by this since I didn't play my best, that is completely
Charge.
fair to say, but I think as a group there was tons of mistakes that we made that could have been fixed. Back to a really successful key where I joined a +9 Halls of Infusion, which like I said went really well. I made sure to set my focus target to the apparatuses so that I could kick or stop the expulse. We saved Lust for the first boss and killed it with minimal issues. Luckily, we had a really geared paladin, Ramza, who did tons of damage. I made sure my healer cooldowns were rotated well enough on Kaijin, and we had to play basically perfectly on the last boss since we hit the intermission right after AoE damage went out, so there was basically no chance to heal it up, meaning that a single wave would kill any of us. But luckily, nobody died, and we finished the boss where we just barely missed the 3 chest, which is really impressive since this is a +9. We got 45 score and managed to have a 0 death run, which I'm actually pretty proud of since for a +9, that's not too shabby. I got into another Neltharus, this time a +8. This tank had similar level gear to mine, though he was rather squishy and he did like to chain pull, which without bolstering is completely fine, but my range meant I had to constantly try to catch up to him for fear that he would die while grouping the mobs. I was our only death on Magma Tusk before getting a B-res, and we actually killed Chargath with no deaths, no lust. Since lust wasn't up in time, I saved it for Forge Master. Final boss was clean enough, and we broke the shields before we ran into too many problems. I got 57 score once we killed the remaining percent that we need. Time for our last key of the week. I knew I needed an Azure Vault, so I set my filter for only this key. I got into a group, and by the time I looked back at the queue timer in the top right to see if it was a +8 or a +9, we had a full group. Tank in this group I actually recognize and have on my friends list. He's a very high IO Vengeance DH that I have played with on my main. I never messaged him or told him to join, and there is a chance that he did recognize me in the group listing for this key, but considering we joined at the same time, I think we both queued up before either joined, and then the leader invited us basically within seconds of each other. This is an alt I only play for this series, and I'm pretty sure on my mage I've only done one key with him if I'm remembering correctly, so hopefully that's alright with you guys, since I had no idea he was going to be in this key when I joined it. I played at an okay level during this key. Mainly my defensive usage and dispelling afflicted was quite weak during this key. I think our paladin was the only other dispel, and most of the time it was me dealing with both afflicted.
Defensive.
We managed to wipe to Azure Blade after 2 DPS died to the swirlies and the orbs during the intermission phase, which obviously I can't do too much about since it usually one-shots you. The last boss was going pretty well, but our warrior stood on the backside of the boss, which was out of my range, and by the time I noticed, I was also basically dead. Again, my defensive usage was really bad on this fight, so definitely should have been better with that. Luckily, I got a battle res and still got the 2 chests. I got a pair of hero track shoulders, really good stats, so we'll have to see if whether or not I catalyze these for my 4-piece in the next episode. So you'll just have to come back to find out. Now, with our 8th key done for the week, I'm going to end off today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. If there's any content that you guys want to see other than pugging challenges, especially as we get closer to the War Within, be sure to let me know in the comments and make sure to subscribe. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time.